Hi. I'm Robert Hoffer. By way of introduction, I've been doing stuff in the computer industry for many, many, many years. I used to be the youngest person in the room. Now I'm one of the oldest. When I say that, my first product was a long time ago, a thing called Sargon, which was the first microcomputer chess program in 1981. So I dropped out of Columbia, much to my parents' chagrin, so that I could take a job at a company called Hayden Publishing, so that I could test video games, which we loaded on, I think the biggest computer we had was an Apple II at the time. That year we won the Microcomputer International Chess Tournament, and we outsold a product called VisiCalc, which meant we sold 100,000 units. And my dad had started a computer store, which was the first Apple dealership in New Jersey, so I grew up in an Apple dealership. So I was at the Mac launch, and my Macintosh is signed by Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs and a whole bunch of other people, and I keep it in my garage. And it's cool. I have a whole career museum in my garage. And so here we are in 2015, and the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I just saw a couple of weeks ago, is still the most boring movie in the entire world. It goes on forever and forever and forever, and the only cool thing about it is the artificially intelligent robot who goes rogue Hal. I'm sorry, Dave. And in 2001, we launched a product called SmarterChild. SmarterChild was sort of a bot Odyssey for us. We launched it onto America Online, the instant messaging thing of the day. At that time, I think at America Online, they had a huge user community, 100 million maybe, 150 million users. SmarterChild was a natural language bot, and I came up with the idea for a natural language bot while I was sitting in the movie Bicentennial Man with Robin Williams, and what I wanted, another boring 2.5-hour movie, like while Robin Williams doesn't age, we all did, but what it was like Robin Williams was a bot who, just like Pinocchio, wanted to be human. So what happened with SmarterChild was we designed all kinds of different applications, which we called knowledge domains. We built a complete development environment called BuddyScript, and we launched the bot within about 6 months. So we grew. We grew and we grew and we grew and we grew. Our guys went to Exodus at the time, which was a network operations center, and there was this little company called Google, and Google was having these servers, these 1U rack servers built. And we saw those, and my partner, Tim Kay, who's my brother-in-law, Caltech PhD, who won the Academy Award for Science and Technology, looked at their servers and said, hey, those are cool, can we have some of those? And so in order to support 30 million users, we were the second largest site in Exodus after Google. So we were using their stuff and just trying to grow to support the traffic. And we'd have to order servers like 2 weeks in advance because they had to build them and rack them up, and that problem's gone away. We were, I don't know, at least 5% of all of the instant messaging traffic in the world was then a bot. And this was when AOL didn't want our bot online. And the reason was we were breaking AOL. It was a problem with presence detection that they couldn't solve, right? And presence detection is like a urinal. When you stand there, it knows you're there. When you leave, it flushes. So with us, it was like the bot knew when you were there. And then when you were there, we would talk to you. And there was no download, so you added it to the buddy list. There was nothing as an impediment to stopping this from happening. And so we found a distribution mechanism that at the time was very difficult because everybody was worried because the download was fat. And it was hard to get things downloaded. So we already had a download. We had AOL AIM and ICQ and MSN Messenger. And so AOL would periodically rate limit us and stop us from going on the network. And we had a kid, his name is Adam Fritzler, that was literally a kid. He was 17 years old that we found online, and he had broken the protocols online and open sourced him. It pissed off AOL tremendously. We hired him, and his job was to sit there, and every time they would change the rate limiting schema at AOL, he would break it, and then we would go back online. We hacked AOL in order to get there. And then the guys from Radiohead saw what we were doing and called us up on the phone and said, hey, we want to launch a Radiohead bot. And it turned out that Raul Mujica, who was running AOL Instant Messenger at the time, a really good guy, loved Radiohead. So we said, hey, we'll do the Radiohead bot if you let this little thing we have called SmarterChild on the network. And he said, okay. So we did that. Oh, just in terms of traffic, we were doing billions of messages, and it was all teens then, it's all teens now. We knew that because we had the statistics. We should tell you, we had the statistics and we watched it from every single of the major platforms, and what would happen is we would have spikes of traffic when people would come home at 3 o'clock on the East Coast from school. The traffic would spike. When they dialed in, the traffic dialed up, you know, dialed up. And then the traffic would spike again 3 hours later. Why? Because the kids were coming home on the other coast. And then it would spike again at like midnight, and what we figured out was happening was that all their other friends were going to sleep, and the only person left to talk with was SmarterChild. And what they did mainly was not what we thought, okay? But let's talk a little bit more about SmarterChild. So here's what happened. Microsoft did due diligence on us. They sent a team of really talented guys. Steve Liffick and a whole bunch of really smart people from Microsoft showed up. They beat the heck out of Pierre Berkoloff and our engineering team. Our engineering team was up to the task. And ultimately, after a whole bunch of years of trying to build something other than SmarterChild, which were instant messaging bots for customer service, for Time Warner and Major League Baseball and every client you could ever possibly imagine. We built hundreds and hundreds of these things. Microsoft decided, hey, customer service might be a really good thing to use this for because it'll reduce our cost of customer service as an actual return on investment. And we grew the thing after, I don't know, $20 million of investment from Reuters Corporation, and you know, we were the darlings of the internet. I went to the White House Correspondents' Dinner as the guest of Reuters. I sat next to Jerry Yang. It was George W. Bush was the guy that was in office then. It's a very weird time for me. So they paid some money for this guy. I think they didn't really pay money for SmarterChild because here's what happened. By 2007, Microsoft realizing that SmarterChild might be a little bit of a problem because he was snarky. If you've ever talked to him, you'll know that, and I can prove it in a second. SmarterChild is an editorial problem. Bots are not a technical problem. Bots are an editorial problem because bots have a personality. When you're talking about something which doesn't have a personality and which runs around behind the scenes and does stuff for you, that's not a bot. That's an agent. Agents don't need personalities. I offer you the Matrix. No personality there. Bots need personalities. That was the key to the success of SmarterChild. He had a personality. In fact, a friend of mine who was a lead character animator by the name of Doug Frankel, who is still a lead character animator, one of the top lead character animators at Pixar, was also an investor in our company. And when he came and talked to SmarterChild, the first thing that he said is, he said to me, Hofsky, we'd known each other for a very long time, your bot is more popular than The Simpsons in terms of audience share. We were bigger than the biggest television show in the history of television. And he said, and the reason was because your bot's got an attitude problem. We were all from New York and New Jersey. Bot's got an attitude problem. So they lobotomized SmarterChild. In 2009, SmarterChild was murdered. They removed him from the network. They killed my baby. We were all very saddened by this because bot lives matter. When SmarterChild was pulled from the network, I went back to talk with Microsoft. And Microsoft had a tendency to buy things back in the day, and in a moment of austerity, what happened was Ray Ozzie and Bill Gates sat down with the team that was leading bot development, and they had just purchased a company called TellMe. You may know TellMe as an integrated voice response system, which was really a question and answer, menu-driven type of product. They spent $800 million on the acquisition, and when they sat down and looked at the technology at Microsoft Research, Ray Ozzie and Bill Gates looked at our technology, which was basically scripted, okay? It was one way to skin the boat at the time. No machine learning, a limited amount of that. We had translated into 8 languages at Microsoft. The mission was to translate into 38 languages. We had only gotten to 8, including Simple Mandarin. We thought that was pretty good. Nobody else even had 1, so 8 we thought was all right. So Bill Gates said to Ray Ozzie, hey, don't we already have something like this? And Ray Ozzie said, no, we have 6 of these. And so they killed it. Rest in peace. I bought back the technology from Microsoft on a license agreement in 2009, and I did a road show on Sand Hill Road, and I called every venture capitalist I know, and I know every venture capitalist. And they're all nice guys, and I went with the original engineer, Pierre Berkoloff, and my co-founder, Peter Levitin, and we explained to them that cell phones are coming. Cell phones are coming, and they're going to have these things. When Sean Carolyn, who was an investor in Siri, one of the early investors, what he said was, when we first came up with the idea of Siri, SmarterChild already had 15 million users and was growing by 20% a week. The market was talking, so they knew. In fact, Siri was the first purchase of an app that Apple ever made. They had lots of apps. In fact, at the WWDC yesterday, they talked about it. Tim said they have 2 million apps. That's a lot of apps. That's more apps than we need. That's more apps than I can fit on my phone. I can only use about one at a time. I use like maybe 6 apps. I'm not sure that the paradigm of bots being apps or bots being web pages is an accurate paradigm, because that's too domain specific for a conversational bot. See, a bot can do lots of things, and an app properly done only does one thing very well. So there's a big difference between a conversational bot and an app or a website. So I like to think, and I don't know if this is true, that we were one of the first memes. What was the meme? The meme was what we called the Captain Kirk problem, which is trying to convince SmarterChild to have sex with you. And that was 60% of all of our traffic. And remember the amount of traffic we had. This was a lot of traffic. And so we had a guy who would sit there all day long, and he would watch people cursing at the bot and come up with a curse word filter, which, by the way, we sold to Microsoft alongside. Now that guy, his name is Chris Bray. I don't know if anyone has heard of Chris Bray. He runs a little website now called apple.com. When the venture capitalists took over SmarterChild, they fired Chris almost immediately, because what did he do? Sat around and developed methods of keeping people from convincing the bot to have sex with them. Microsoft had the technology to prevent the Tay problem from happening, where if your bot talks back, your end users will have a lot of fun hacking the bot. I promise. They will try. They will also succeed. Just like Captain Kirk was able to defeat Landru on the computer planet, they will get him in a logical loop. And we had a problem with a Santa bot, because, you know, if you said to the Santa bot, you know, I want to sit on your lap, it got a little hinky. That was a problem. You have to be careful of those kinds of things. So fast forward, welcome, 5 minutes, welcome Smarter Children. You're all children of SmarterChild. We weren't even the first bot, right? The first concepts of these things goes Alan Turing back, right? It's way, way back. Natural language processing is one of those things like, you know, flying cars. We know there's going to be a flying car, and until Elon builds it, we won't have it, right? So when I was a kid, really young, I saw a guy by the name of Alan Kay, who's an Apple fellow, and he played the piano during his speech, and what he talked about was creating the future by inventing it. And that's what you guys are doing, right? It took 15 years for this to swing around and become a fad again. I mean, is there a bot phenomenon? I'm looking around the room, I'm thinking, yeah, there is. We tried to do this. We launched a platform, we got some users, now there are 10,000 people building bots. When your platform does something that you don't expect to do, it's mature. That's what Steve Liffick at Microsoft said when he saw our product. So, why are your bots different than all other bots? Don't guess my religion. Like, there are 4 kinds of bots, right? The dull, the foolish, the heedless, and the wise. And what I want to counsel you guys to do is don't build dull bots. And by dull bots, I mean like Dory the fish. Dory the fish doesn't remember what she had for lunch this morning. If you ask Alexa, which is a cool bot, and we'll talk about Alexa in a second. If you ask Alexa, I'm interested in the weather in Miami, it'll tell you the weather in Miami. If you say, can you book me some flights there, it doesn't know the anaphora of what does there mean. And SmarterChild did. We had phatic expression, we had anaphora, we had all the natural language processing stuff that you need to maintain a full conversation, and we were keeping profiles on every single user in depth. You see, intimacy is a matter of shared remembrance and experience. And if your bot doesn't remember day to day or month to month what your customer was saying, then your bot's an idiot. It's a Dory bot. Don't build Dory bots. Build wise bots. Okay. If you ain't got that do-re-mi. Our problem was we never really even wanted a business model. The venture capitalist behind the company was a guy by the name of Andy Weissman. Andy Weissman's at Union Square Venture Partners in New York. He's a dear friend of mine. Our plan was never to write a business plan and to sell this thing to AOL for hundreds of millions of dollars before anybody realized what had happened. That didn't happen. So we were forced to look at business models. What are the business models? The business models are transactions, advertising, subscriptions, and development. Most of you, I think, are on the D side, developing bots for a living for somebody else. There probably are spots for each of these types of models, but I think there's another way to go. Alexa has sold over 4 million units to date. Closing in on 5, $200 each, it's $1 billion. It's by far the highest revenue generator. They've taken a firm lead. I was at the WWDC listening to what was said. What they said was something sad. What they said was, Siri is now going to be opened up. Apple has chosen now to be number 2. We're opening up. Why? Because who else opened up? Alexa is open, so you can go and you can program Alexa. You can do your home entertainment system with Alexa. You can control your Philips Hue lighting. But the problem now is this. Your business, our business, the business we're all in is like Frogger, okay? If you're hopping across the street in Frogger, you're going to get hit by one side or another. And so there's a platform problem. No slide presentation would be complete without the compulsory slide of logos. My compulsory slide of logos, I'm sure you all know which ones they are the platform choices that you guys have to make. I wish I could inform you which was the better choice. I can't. I can tell you something about distribution, though, and that's how I'd like to close today. Dependent is unsustainable. That's what we found. We were dependent on Microsoft, on AOL, and on Yahoo to have our product up. You guys will likewise be dependent upon Microsoft and Facebook and Google. You must find an independent path and you must find independent distribution paths. There are several distribution models, and I'll close with this. So the distribution models, I call them Star Trek. Go where no one has gone before, and the world will follow you there, potentially do something new. New is important. Don't just do what everybody else is doing. Field of Dreams, this really actually works in our business. If you build it, they will come. That's what happened with SmarterChild. In fact, we used all of these. The other distribution model is the Manchurian Candidate. You're building sleeper agents. When you launch and you have traffic, we got traffic through sex chat. We were then able to use it to generate millions of dollars of advertising revenue. It wasn't our plan, but guess what? Once you're talking with somebody and in conversation with them, you might be able to do something else, Manchurian Candidate. And then finally, the craze, A Hard Day's Night. What happened with SmarterChild was word of mouth distribution picked up, and we became a virus. And so the reason for our growth of traffic is these 4 distribution models. And so I urge you to consider, don't be dependent upon one platform, and consider your distribution models. Look for ways to make money. And I should say, in Silicon Valley, I've been doing this a very long time. For all of you who know, winter is coming. So do it quickly, do it now, and thank you for your time.